Hello everyone. Um, the theme of the conference, as you know, is time to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And this is really my purpose in this very short workshop to help those who are not familiar with reading circles to learn about them, and to help those who maybe are familiar to relearn how they can possibly use them online. Could I just ask a quick question? And if you could answer in the chat, how many of you have used reading circles before? Anyone? Anyone used reading circles? Yes, no? Yes? Almost every week. Great, fantastic. Okay. Yeah, so I'll be introducing those who are unfamiliar with it to what a reading circle is. I'll be introducing the materials, and we won't have time to do a reading circle because those who do them know that they take quite a long time, but we might have a chance to just have a taste at least. Okay, so let me begin then. So um, reading circles are also called sometimes literature circles, book circles, book clubs. It depends whether we do them as part of our curriculum or whether we do them as after school activities. We can do any of those. Originally, the idea is often credited to Paulo Freire, if you've heard of him. He developed culture circles, which were groups of people who used to sit together and solve problems, discuss problems, and learn from each other, which is a little bit what we're doing now. And um, this is kind of a very quick summary of what they are. So people who are learning to read need to be encouraged, especially when it comes to extensive reading, reading for pleasure. If we want our learners to do this, we need to encourage them to do this. And reading circles is one way in which they can do this together. At the same time as helping their literacy, it also encourages them to think about the topics and the problems that come up in the readings, and they try to solve the problems for themselves. So the purposes overall are A, to establish a reading habit, also to help their fluency, their reading fluency, their speaking fluency, listening to each other, understanding what they read, understanding what each other um, tells them. So all the skills will be involved. Um, it also helps them to look at the social context, contexts of different readings. So all the history and the geography and all the stuff that's connected. So we can call it cross-curricular in a way. It helps them to find certain information quickly and easily. So it teaches them the useful reading skills of skimming and scanning, not reading every word, which is what a lot of foreign language learners do. It also promotes community development, so they learn to work cooperatively, they learn to work with each other, to respect each other's role in the group. Um, and it gives them a fantastic context for discussing, for problem solving, and then finally writing up what they've researched, what they've thought about, and preparing it to present to each other. So there's a lot of benefits, a lot of good things that come out of them. So that was the kind of global answer to what they are. Let's break it down into very simple steps for those who are not familiar with reading circles. They're small groups of students in the class. They meet either in the classroom or online. It's suitable for both, to talk about stories. And these groups allow kids to discuss naturally and hopefully enjoyably. In a reading circle, each student has a different role. There are usually 7 roles, So we would normally put our students into groups of 7, but if it you can't exactly, well, let's say you have 35 kids. How many do most people have in your class? If you have 35 in your class, you could have 5 groups of 7. Otherwise, you can always miss out 1 or 2 of the roles. If you've got 5 in one group and 7 in the others, you can always miss one out. We're going to look at these roles now in a minute in detail, but just very quickly run through them. One of the students, usually one of the stronger students, will be the chair. One will be the theme secretary. One will be the plotter. One, the character artist. One, the words and grammar researcher. There will be a language expert and a setting recorder. So let's have a look at these briefly in a moment. So you as a teacher will break the class up into groups of more or less 7, give each student a role. Students then go home, they read the short story or part of the short story. They don't, if you feel that reading the whole story all in one go is going to be a bit too much, you can break it up. They each have a role, they have a worksheet that goes with it, they prepare, read the story, prepare their role sheets, and then they come together either in class or online and they discuss what they've read. Again, these 7 roles, I'm going to run through them very quickly just to show you what they involve. So again, before we go on, let me just mention that if any of you would like to get hold of these roles and task sheets, different publishers do actually provide them. As you know, I work for Macmillan, so there, if you want to take a screenshot of that particular link, that will take you to the roles and the worksheets if you want to use them with your students, and they're available in 2 levels. So there's 1 level of task sheets, the same roles, but for beginners or elementary students, and there's also a slightly more advanced level of all the roles and worksheets for intermediate or upper intermediate students. So you have 2 roles there, or 2 levels, let me say. Okay, looking very quickly, how many jobs does the chair have? How many things do they have to prepare? Very quickly. Just, you can tell me in the chat box, skimming and scanning, how many things are they going to do? Yeah. So as it says up at the top here, you are the chair. So the student who is more confident, stronger language-wise, will take this role. They have, as it says up at the top, 3 jobs. One of those jobs is to write down 4 or 5 questions, which they're going to write down here on their worksheet, which they're going to ask each of the other people in their group. There's some examples given there. Is it a sad book, a happy book? Did you like the ending, etc.? Also, they can ask the other people in their group whether they liked the character or if they visited a similar place to the book, or if they've read a similar book or had a similar experience in their own life. So they're guided to actually preparing questions for the other group members. They then lead the meeting. They make sure that everybody in the group, one by one, speaks. The chair speaks first, and then they ask each person in turn to answer these particular questions. And the theme secretary also will be speaking, and they record which people have actually taken which role, so that next time when they do another reading circle, different people can take different roles. Okay, the next role is the theme secretary. So this person has how many jobs? Okay, so again, 3 jobs. The theme secretary is going to decide what the themes are. They're going to try and identify what they think the 3 most important themes are. They're going to write them down on their worksheet, and also they're going to write down why they think these themes are important. Also, if the story was set a long time ago in the past, then they can also answer why they think these themes are still important or not nowadays. So that's going to be a link for the others in the group to think about whether anything in the story is relevant to their lives today. And then their third job is to show their notes to the other members of the Book Corner Club so that they can write a summary of the meeting as a group. So that's the second role. And while you're listening to these, think about which one would you like to take, which role would suit you, because I'm going to show you the story just very quickly after I've gone through the roles, so you might have a chance to actually look for some of these things. So think about whether you want to, whether you would like to be the chair or the theme secretary, so that you can focus on certain things that you'd be looking for in a story. The plotter, the third role, this person also has 3 jobs to do. They write down the key events in the story, events that they think are the most important, the event which they think it marks the climax of the story, the most important, the most tense moment, and they also choose 2 of these events and think about 2 questions to ask the other people in their group about these events. They also choose 3 adjectives to describe the plot, and find out if the other club members agree with them. And their third job is to look at the pictures in the reader, and actually be prepared to talk about what is happening in each picture and whether they think these pictures show important moments in the story. So they do that. The fourth role is the character artist. You've got it. They're going to focus on the characters. Again, 3 jobs. They're going to note down the characters, draw a tree or a diagram on their worksheet here in the box, showing the relationship. They're going to summarize this for the other members of the group, and talk about the relationships of the characters. Also, they're going to decide which 2 or 3 characters are most important and write a short paragraph to describe each one. And in the meeting, they're going to ask the other club members or the other reading circle members if they agree with what they've concluded about the characters. And then finally, at home, asynchronously, they're going to think of 3 questions that they can ask their other club members about the characters or about their opinion of the characters. So that's the job of the character artist. The words and grammar researcher has 4 jobs. They're going to look for 10 words that are new for them, that they think are useful, and then share these words and the meanings, which they will look up in an online dictionary, give an example. Then after they've read the story, they're going to look back and choose 7 or 8 of the words that they think are very important to the story. These are either new words or not new words. Maybe they're words they knew already. And in the meeting, they're going to explain why they chose these 7 or 8 very important words. They're also going to look out for new or unfamiliar grammar structures, and present those and what function they have. And they're also going to ask the other members of the group which words or structures they found perhaps difficult or interesting or important in the story. For example, is the past tense used a lot? Is the present tense used a lot? Is the future tense used a lot? Why is this? Why is it important? And then finally, they're going to make a summary of all the new words that the uh, the reading circle together learned from reading this story. The language expert, a little bit different. They're going to again have 3 jobs. They're going to look for interesting pieces of text. So they're going to look for paragraphs or sentences. They're also going to look about whether the story was written in the past or the present, and why. They are going to explain why they chose certain sentences or certain phrases. Was it because they liked them, or because they thought they added to the tension, or because they were very colourful? And finally, they're going to choose their favourite passage and read it out to the other club members and explain why they like it, and find out if the other club members agree. The setting recorder has, again, 3 jobs. They're going to find references that are typical to the place where the story is set. So plants, animals, customs, places, weathers, buildings, etc., which are not typical of their own town or country. So nice bit of cross-cultural comparison there. They can look them up on the internet or in Wikipedia, and prepare to tell the other members in the group what they found. They will also be asked to look for references to clothes or vehicles or social habits which are typical of the historical period in which the story is set and not of modern times. Again, find out about them online, and then prepare to share. And then also, they're going to look for geographical and historical references to things that do remind them of their own country and time. Note those down and discuss those also with the other members of the group. So that was the 7 roles, if you can remember them. This was the particular extract that I chose. I don't know, maybe we'll have time for me to quickly read this while you are thinking about one of those roles and what they might actually be able to pick up from that. This was I, for example, would certainly start with just part of a story, not necessarily a whole story, unless it really is very, very short. So this is the story. I don't know whether you'd like me to read it out, or whether you'd like to read it on your own, or whether you just like me to move on. Just let me know in the chat box. Let me see. Would you like me to read it? Would you like me to pass? Or so that you can digest the roles, perhaps? Or shall we move on? Anyone? You read it for yourselves, okay? While you're looking at that, while you're reading that, you could be thinking about, if I was the the setting researcher, what would I be able to say? What time is it set in? If you were the character expert, what would you be looking at? Okay, we have 10 minutes to go. So you can also read this later on. You can actually use part of this. I will share my presentation with perhaps with the school, perhaps with Hava or someone at the school or with UES, and they can then share it with you later on. Okay, so you'll have noticed that this particular story is set probably in modern times. It's got Mum and Cara and her brother, and they're going on. Well, Mum thinks it's a holiday. Cara doesn't think it's a holiday. You'll notice Dad isn't present, so there's a lot of possible hypotheses here that students can have. You know, where is Dad? Why isn't Dad there? Cara is annoyed with her little brother. Again, relationships between siblings. They arrive at this place called Owl Hall, and then we have a great climax at the end of this short extract, where as Cara goes to open the gate, she hears a voice saying, "Cara, help me, let me go." But when Cara turned round, no one was there. So we can see it's probably going to be maybe something to do with ghosts or a hostage situation. Who knows? But definitely set in modern times, and perhaps there are a lot of themes there that students could identify with. So I'm going to move on. If you're doing it for the first time, it's always a good idea to give students a set of the role sheets, introduce the roles as I did to you, present each one at a time, allow students to discuss amongst themselves to make sure that they understand what each role needs to do. You can give them a photocopy of the worksheet. They can take notes on the worksheet to make sure that they understand what they have to do in each of the roles, because ideally it would be nice if you do a few of these reading circles over the course of an academic year. Then they can play different roles each time they read another short story together. So nice to prepare them at the very beginning. It's also very useful to have a clear schedule that they can all make sure that they know when they're going to have their first reading circle, their first meeting, their second one, the third one, let's say 6 over the course of a year, which story they're going to be reading and who is going to be playing which role in their reading circle. Again, as I said, if you have 35 students in a class, you could have 5 groups. So you would have 5 people in one box, not five names in each box, because 5 groups would have 5 chairs, 5 secretaries, and so on. So make sure that they all know exactly when it's happening, so they can't say "Hoca bilmiyordum, unuttum." With again, those who do reading circles regularly, I don't know how you deal with them online. Maybe you'd like to share with us in chat box. Obviously, if you want to use Zoom as we're doing today, we have breakout rooms where students can work in groups, and you can move from breakout room to check how they're doing. If you're not using Zoom, perhaps we could ask students to do these discussions on Skype, but at different times, so that you can also be present in the background, but perhaps just checking out that they're doing okay. Or again, organize a specific time, a specific place, and then pop in and out of the different Skype groups. Some of you might be using Google Teams or Microsoft Teams. And, you know, if the worst comes to the worst, there's always WhatsApp for a little bit of discussion. And I don't know if any of you, I mean, you can put in the chat box if you do use any other platform for your reading circles. I'd be interested to know what platforms you're using. Those of you who are doing reading circles or have done reading circles. Anyone like to share in the chat box what you're doing? What platform you're using? While I continue, another very nice platform is Flipgrid. I don't know if any of you have used that, where students, each student, each person who's playing a role, each learner, prepares their worksheet and then records what they've written down, and they can upload their recording onto Flipgrid, and then as a class they can watch each other's recordings. They can also add music, they can add video, they can add comments, so peer evaluation, they can add comments, especially the Z generation teenagers, they want feedback sometimes, they want likes and confirmation that they're doing okay, so they can make audio comments, reviews of each other's, and this can then be shared. Each person can record what they've talked about, what they've discussed, what they've found, what they've written down on their worksheet. They can put it up there on Flipgrid, and this can then be shared perhaps with other classes or other schools, and even with other countries. It really depends on your school policy, and but it can be a very nice sharing tool. Yes, no, the idea is we don't help them with mistakes during the online meetings. The idea is that the teacher is very much out of it in the background. However, they will probably run to each other's help. They have had time to prepare it. If there are any mistakes at all, again, fluency is the idea here, getting the idea across. And actually, so let's not correct mistakes during the online meetings. Absolutely. Let them figure it out for themselves. This is a great opportunity for them to see how they manage on their own. You can always keep a note if you want to in the background. You can keep a note. And if you've noticed that a lot of people are making the similar kind of mistakes, again, delayed correction, much later on at another time. But the focus of this reading really is for them to enjoy it, for them to find specific information and share it with each other and have a discussion and actually work on specific topics or problems. So definitely not correction during at all. Thanks for that question. It was a good one. Okay, just finishing off, last 2 minutes, I believe. I'd just like to just look at some potential problems and possible solutions. Some teachers might be worried that their students' English is not good enough to understand or discuss stories. Um, and a possible solution to that could be, first of all, you're probably aware that usually we are advised by the experts to always choose a reader or a story which is one level below that of your students' English, so that they won't get too blocked by a lot of unknown language. Secondly, could they use online dictionaries? Could they use a little bit of translation? For example, one activity that we often advise is, say, ask students to choose 5 words that they think they don't understand and that they think are going to help them to understand the story. And they then look up these words either in a bilingual dictionary or a monolingual dictionary, and then they go back to the story, they see if it's helped them or not, and they discuss with colleagues whether they made a good choice to help them understand the story or not. Also, for students with learning difficulties, could we perhaps give them a different role? If you've got a student that's struggling in the class or students struggling in the class, could they be an illustrator? For example, there are other roles as well. I don't know, I'd love to hear from people what they do with students who are struggling a little bit at the beginning, whether there is a role for them to play. I'm sure there is. And similarly, we could simplify the worksheets or we could limit them so that they have less to do. Another very common problem is my students don't like reading. Um, and this is something that comes up again and again with our current generation. Again, the answer might be maybe they've never had a good experience of reading before. So we could always say, let's try the reading circle and then see, then tell me if you like it or not. Again, limit perhaps the reading circle to focus just on sections or a few pages of the book at first. Lower the challenge. And also, if there's a film of the book or the story, see if you can find perhaps a little clip or a preview on YouTube and start that off to whet their appetites. Just 2 more. One of them, again, often teachers will say, what if one of my students don't prepare for the reading circle? And the answer to that is, those who run reading circles, can you give us your answer to that? What do you do when this happens? Yeah, you can certainly make students responsible for the video. Good, good, absolutely. I'm afraid I can't send the presentation through the chat box, but I'll get it to the school so that you can download it for the future. Also, remember, if you want those worksheets, just go to the reference that I gave you a little bit earlier. I'll go back to it at the end and you can take a photograph of that. But the answer to this, if the students are not prepared, no, it's too late in class because you need that time for the reading circle. This is the rule, and this is an unbendable rule, and we have to get them used to this rule. If they haven't, they do have to prepare, and if they can't attend the session, they will need to send or give the completed worksheet to a friend or the teacher the day before the reading circle takes place. This is, one thing we've got to, say, okay, every activity, every game has rules, and this is one rule that you have to be very strict about. Otherwise, this is going to happen again and again. Alternatively, you can tell them to do it there and then. If they are there, they haven't prepared their worksheet, the first 1 or 2 times, they will have to do it without preparing. But I think this is something we've got to actually enforce strictly, because otherwise it won't work.
Mrs.
And
Teresa,
finally, the final, sorry,
I am
yes?
sorry to interrupt, but time is out.
Yeah, I'm on the last question. If
Okay.
one or more students don't have a computer at home, then we can always perhaps ask them if there's a mobile phone in the house. Can they record their answers onto the phone, send a recording to the teacher, who could then upload the recording to Flipgrid or Google Docs, or perhaps they could video chat on WhatsApp or Skype on the phone. So it could perhaps be done on a phone if that is a problem. So thank you very much. We did start 5 minutes later, which is why I went on 5 minutes later. Sorry if I've
Thank you
delayed you a
very
little
much.
bit. Yeah. Hava, do you know how I could I share my PowerPoint with you, and then people could get it off you or off the website somewhere?
Uh, Actually, they can find all of the webinars in YouTube channel in 2 weeks, or we can contact with you, and if it is possible, let's see. Right.
Yes,
But
let's see.
teachers, you can find all of the webinars in YouTube channels, and the links will be shared with you,
Yeah.
and you can watch it again.
And I've also put up, if you want to take a screenshot or a photo of that particular reference, that's where you can find all of the worksheets that I've shared with you today.
Thank you for your presentation. It was.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you then.
See you. Bye.